Who is the strongest character in the amazing world of Gumball? You might think it's Gumball, or maybe Nicole, or maybe even Tobias. Yeah, no, I'll spoil it for you, it's not Tobias. But in this video, that burning question will be answered, because I scoured the internet, rewatching every Amazing World of Gumball episode, and analyzing every character to reach what I believe is the 8 strongest characters in Elmore. In this video, we'll be seeing them fight in a bracket tournament style game, and see who is the strongest person in Elmore. Battle number 1 is Nicole versus Hector. We saw in the limit that Nicole can age a man by decades just by looking at him. And we know that if her kids are in danger, Nicole will turn into a crazy fighter. We also know from the choices that she was trained in karate since she was young, and she's probably now a multi-degree black belt judging by her fighting style. However, we also saw that Hector could blow houses away with just a sneeze, and that he could also defeat Kenneth, something that no one else, not even Nicole, could do. Based purely on his size, and the fact that he could just step on Nicole, this seems like an easy dub for Hector. That is until you remember that Nicole has experience with fighting giants, like when she fought Tina's dad.
Well, I'm glad we finally reached an agreement.
And won. Even though this fight scene wasn't explicitly shown, viewers inferred that Nicole's astounding speed made it so that even though one hit from a T-Rex could immobilize her, she never got hit in the first place. I think the same thing will happen in this matchup, so Nicole moves on in the bracket. The next fight though, is Bobert versus Gumball. Now this matchup did actually happen in Season 1, although this was way before Gumball turned into Goku and before Bobert turned into an even stronger robot. In this scenario though, Gumball simply ran away from Bobert's lasers, so we'll call that a loss. However, we have to account for both characters' growths over the seasons. For Gumball, he can turn into a Super Saiyan, which by itself is crazy powerful, but he also has the power of plot armor. Basically, if they were to fight, Gumball wouldn't be able to die, or else the show wouldn't be able to go on. That is until you realize that the Amazing World of Gumball is an episodic show, meaning that Gumball can lose, and the show will still go on with him being alive in the next episode. That means that because Bobert can shoot lasers, he would probably win in this matchup. Round 3, Larry versus Richard. This might be a bit surprising to viewers that I think these two are in the top 8 strongest of Elmore, but you gotta let me explain. This is my favorite matchup, so I just had to make it happen. And this is also probably the most entertaining fight. But let's start with Larry, who works an estimated 86 jobs. For one, he's a super hard worker, much more than Richard, but he also probably has some sort of superpower. We saw in an episode with Rob that a bunch of different Larrys, working different jobs, walked by. This means that Larry can either clone himself or manipulate time, and both are pretty powerful in combat. But can that beat Buff Richard? We saw in the diet that after Richard worked out for a couple of days, he looked like he was going to be in contention for Mr. Olympia, unfortunately for him though. Larry clones would probably be able to beat a bodybuilder that isn't trained in combat. So that leads us to look at Richard with a job. Arguably the most powerful sub-character in the whole show, once Richard got a job, he was able to manipulate space and time. It wouldn't matter if Larry had clones if Richard could literally manipulate reality. However, these powers only come with the job. And because Larry is the boss of basically every occupation in Elmore, he could easily take away Richard's job. And his powers.
Have you been eating this pizza? Just a little bit from the middle! Waterson, in accordance with Article 34 of the Affirmative Pizza Handbook,
I fire thee.
no!
That gives the dub to Larry, and he moves on in today's bracket. But finally, the last battle of the preliminary rounds is Clayton versus Carrie. The Anybody first introduced us to Clayton the Shapeshifter. We saw him turn into Gumball, a water fountain, and a crocodile. In fact, Snowwalk on the Gumball Wiki listed him as the strongest character in all of Elmore because of his boundless shapeshifting capabilities. Anything he can touch, he can beat, or at least match in a fight. Unfortunately for him, however, Carrie is not something he can touch. As a ghost, we saw Carrie frequently avoid tangible danger and possess other people's bodies. Moreover, she's able to use many other ghost superpowers, like telekinesis, teleportation, levitation, and so much more. Due to her intangible nature and her plethora of superpowers, Carrie would probably beat Clayton in a fight, despite his massive strength in the real world. That means, moving on into the semifinals are Nicole, Bobert, Larry, and Carrie. Let's first take a look at Nicole and Bobert. Now, I didn't mention this in the fight versus Hector because she didn't really need it, but in the Fury, we saw Nicole actually fight, one of the few battles in the whole series. Frankly, this fight was probably my favorite scene in the whole show. They started off with some crazy sequencing, but also somehow whipped out the Rasengan and Hadouken. Their speed was untrackable, and their power was enough to destroy the school gymnasium. Tie this with everything I said before, and it's an easy Nicole victory. However, I also left out a couple of details from Bobert's fight. In the upgrade, we saw Bobert's flying capabilities, and the fact that he probably has infinite fuel. Even though Nicole is fast, she probably can't fly the same height as Bobert. In addition, Bobert can not only shoot lasers, but he also has super durability and the most intelligence in the show due to being a supercomputer. Purely because Bobert can just camp Nicole in the air with laser vision, but could also probably beat her on the ground, Bobert takes this battle definitely. And for the last semi-final round, we have Larry versus Carrie. I'll keep this one short because it is probably obvious. Larry being in this bracket was mostly just because he's the only one that hard counters Richard. Because of Carrie's ability to possess Larry, it doesn't really matter how many clones he has as long as she can possess them all. Even further, we saw Larry get hypnotized by Gumball and Darwin in one of the earliest episodes. Gumball and Darwin didn't even have any powers, so he got hypnotized by an ordinary watch. This shows that he doesn't have the mental fortitude to resist Carrie's possession, so this fight is an easy sweep for Carrie. And finally, for the title of the strongest person of Elmore, we have the fight of Bobert versus Carrie. While Carrie's possession is what enabled her to beat Larry's clones, because Bobert is a robot, she wouldn't be able to do that, so we'll have to analyze her other ghost powers. Overall, none of Bobert's powers would be able to tangibly touch Carrie. All his other strengths, laser vision, elastic arms, or flight, wouldn't actually do any damage to a ghost. However, Carrie wouldn't be able to do anything either. Her primary strength, telekinesis, would be completely countered by Bobert's super durability and jet boosters, and all her other powers, outside of possession, are all defensive and wouldn't do any damage. Unfortunately, it seems our final round would be a standstill. However, one individual in this fight has a time limit. Bobert's battery, as we've seen in the upgrade, can die. That means, since this fight is a complete stalemate, Bobert's battery would eventually run out, leaving Carrie to be Elmore's strongest character. I hope you enjoyed this video. I had a ton of fun making it, and I'd love if you could leave a like and subscribe so I can make more for you all. Also, let me know if there's any videos you'd like to see next.